Hello and welcome to the Gaggle What We Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, even as Israel continues pounding away at Gaza, hitting ambulances, hitting refugee camps, ostensibly the hunting down the Hamas leaders, but they never seem to show any the body of a Hamas leader.
And it's hunting down a leader at a time, it seems.
A leader at a time, exactly. In the meantime, countless civilians are dead, countless are injured, and the scenes are horrific. So you have convoys of ambulances which are heading south. And then they hit. They're heading south. They're following the instructions of the Israelis. They're heading south, and then they get hit as they're heading south. In the meantime, the Israel lobby, as is its wont, is very good at changing the subject and cutting and dicing to which particular section of the electorate it wants to appeal to. So we've seen the revival of that post 9/11 atmosphere of it's a civilizational struggle. Islam is this overwhelming threat to the Judeo-Christian world.
The new Al-Qaeda.
Exactly. Then it's civilizational. This is a threat from a radical Islam, and Jews and Christians need to unite together in this existential global civilizational struggle. So we've seen that aspect of this already cropping up. We've had another angle, which hasn't done so well, which is the idea that somehow, well, Islam is really an enemy of the gays. It's an enemy of the lesbians. If you're a lesbian, you just can't, you can't get married under Islam. So
we have to bomb a hospital to protect trans rights somewhere.
Exactly. That's right. So they're really retrograde when it comes to LGBTQ and in all sorts of women. Why the last thing you want to be is to be a woman under Islam. So you're trying to get that constituency. And then, of course, you've got the hardy perennial, which is that Jews are in fear of their lives. Absolutely, they're absolutely petrified wherever they go. At any moment, they could be accosted by, gangs of roaming youth with armbands, swastika armbands.
To be fair, if you're an Israeli soldier in Gaza, you should be afraid.
Yes, exactly.
But other than that,
of course, but they want to suggest that this is happening in New York, of all places. So I want to just show you a particularly demented. We mentioned this before, but it's worth just looking at this. This is a particularly demented rant from Donny Deutsch on MSNBC. Now, Donny Deutsch is basically, he's not even a professional journalist. He's an advertising guy. But he's not even that good at it. I mean, he inherited the business from his father, and then he just sold it. But he somehow is a permanent feature on MSNBC. And he's tried.
Donald Trump would describe him as a real beauty.
A real beauty, exactly. And he's kind of done, TV gigs.
Well, he had his own program, and it failed in a week.
It failed completely. Exactly. He did a kind of reality TV show, sort of like a Larry David, featuring a kind of caricature of himself. But it was an absolute flop. He obviously just doesn't have the talent of Larry David. So he's now back at MSNBC, the talking head with Joe Scarborough and the rest of them. So here, take a look at this. And here
Israel seems to be on trial, which I don't understand. That Israel, people are saying ceasefire. And of course, none of us want violence, but there was a ceasefire on October 6th. And since that time, we know what happened on October 7th, beheading, raping, every inhumane thing that you can do, ripping babies out of mothers' wombs. And since then, it's
8.5 hours of sustained violence against the civilian population.
And by a group whose only mission is not real estate, and it's not protecting Palestinian people. They put their own people in harm's way. They use them as shields. They've stolen billions of dollars of aid from the humanitarian aid for them. Their only mission is to eliminate Israel, eliminate all Jews. That's it. That's their mission. And yet, constantly, Israel seems to be on the defensive about explaining what they, obviously Israel has to be very careful and it's got to do things surgically, but no other group goes through this scrutiny. I mean, Joe Scarborough, our dear friend, had an amazing talk the other morning where he said, can you imagine if Mexico came in and Mexico had just did the same thing to us? Would people be saying restraint, restraint? And I also wonder, this is going to bring me back to the college campuses, all the pro-Palestinian, where were the pro-Palestinian chants when Palestinians have been oppressed in other areas? How is this pro-Palestinian or is it simply anti-Jewish and anti-Israel? Which comes back
I don't know what he's talking about there. But...
at the same time, after Jews were
attacked,
it's elevated, and I need to read the things because.
Well, I assume, and I don't know, because he didn't elaborate, that somehow the Palestinians are being oppressed elsewhere in the Arab world. I mean, I assume that that's what that somehow, the Egyptians are oppressing, or the Jordanians are oppressing. I think, but he doesn't elaborate.
Well, I mean, the fact that we have to question it means it's probably not of the magnitude that would reach our attention on a daily basis.
Right. But they need that, but that's part of their story. Oh, nobody likes the Palestinians. Everybody hates them, so hey, but why is it only that Israel is not allowed to hate the Palestinians?
Well, I mean, but Israel is the only one that's slaughtering them. Okay.
Exactly.
It's not just rhetoric. This is what was on the Cornell bulletin board last night. If you see a Jewish person on campus, follow them home and slit their throats. Rats need to be eliminated from Cornell. Another one. If you see another Jew on campus, if you see a pig male Jew, I will stab you and slit your throat. If I see another pig female Jew, I will drag you away and rape you and throw you off a cliff. And it goes on and on and on.
So this is this one student who posted ridiculous things. I don't even know whether this is this one student is for real. But yeah. How long are they going to go on milking this one crazy, maybe something worse, student?
Or maybe just invented to incite.
Exactly.
Well, that's my inclination, George.
Mine too. It's just, it all sounds very, to be honest, just very unlikely.
All right. So these messages on this bulletin board, if they are true, then we must commit a genocide against 2.2 million people. That's the logic here?
That's the logic, yeah. That's right, exactly. That's right. Here's this one person, who may be, mentally unstable. There are students who are mentally unstable.
Sure.
We've had students who just go crazy and start shooting people. Or, the whole thing could just be a put-up job.
There's a level of hatred, and I want to draw the line back to why Israel is in the defensive position after being attacked, because it's about anti-Semitism and it's about the hate towards Jews that is now surfacing in this country. There is something that for some reason evil is not graded the same way when it's against Jews and it's against Israel. And I don't understand that. I do understand it.
What is it?
Anti-Semitism. There's something about that for some reason Jews as a group, as a minority, there's 15 million in the world. There would have been 250 million without the Holocaust.
250?
Beginning of time.
Sorry, could you? He said there would have been 250 million without the Holocaust. How does he get that? How does he get that number? I mean, let's say, the estimates are 5 to 6 million Jews died in World War II. How does he get to 250 million? I don't,
Well, I mean, that would have to be a fertility rate more than 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it's
no, big numbers impress people. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
George, he's on TV. Must be true.
That's right. Yeah.
Go after these people in a way that no other people. I'm not a history student.
Obviously.
Know the history. The Jews are treated different than other groups. That there's a dislike. That there is somehow that Jews being hurt or being slaughtered is different than other people being hurt. That somehow they have it coming to them. Yeah, I said it. That's what this is about.
Every mother of a hostage that I interviewed said, I'm not political. I want to live in peace next to my neighbors. They didn't have political agenda.
Israelis want to live in peace. Hamas doesn't. Hamas is not fighting for peace. They're fighting for death. They don't want peace for their own people. This is just.
All right. So that you get the gist of this. So here he is. He's a victim. He's a very rich man. Basically does nothing all day, just simply goes on these TV shows, and he's somehow a victim. You know, he's Jews are under attack, so people like him are under attack. And just like these students, these at Columbia University, they're all pretty much all of them come from very wealthy families who can afford the fees, the $50,000 a year or whatever of Columbia fees, and the most pampered group of people in the world. I mean, just being at Columbia, or Stanford, and they're victims, not the 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza, crammed into this tiny space. Then it's the Jews. It's this rich, pampered Jews living in the United States. They're the victims. Right? There's Donny Deutsch. He's being, people are picking on him. And what's the evidence? Some crazy student posting some nonsense on a bulletin board.
Well, I suppose he has Israeli citizenship too.
Could well be. A number of these people have that. He could, if he wanted, he could get it.
Yeah. Well, see, George, I mean, that whole presentation, there's no, that is a uninformed opinion. It's not fact-driven whatsoever. Again, I mean, this is a good clip to play because it is an intentional decontextualize. It is non-contextualized. There's no grounding of what's happening right now in a larger complex history and relationship in the Middle East. I mean, Judge, you and I were growing up. This is a conflict time immemorial. I've always been. No, it's not true at all. It happened when Israel became a state. Okay, that's basically when the problem. Sure, there were fanatical Muslims. There were some fanatical Jews. This happened time and again over a millennia. Okay, but for the most part, they lived in their very siloed communities, right. Okay, right. But they weren't at war with each other from time immemorial.
Right. No, that's exactly right. And this is where it gets very instructive because, of course, the Israel lobby then goes into the next situation, next argument, which is, well, the Palestinians brought it on themselves. Well, how do they bring it on themselves? How do you bring something on yourself? Well, they should just accept reality. The reality is that this is Israel. Israel is there. They're not going to be able to defeat Israel. It's never going to happen. They just have to accept reality.
That's the Jim Crow argument.
That's the Jim Crow argument. And if you think that this is I'm making this up, I want to show you something. This is an article that appeared a couple of days ago in the Telegraph of London by Andrew Roberts. I think you said you had him on Crosstalk. He's an eminent historian. He's a popular historian. He's written many books. A very conservative historian. He is now a baron, I think Baron of Belgravia or something. So he's now has a seat on the House of Lords, and much beloved by American neoconservatives. He's a fellowship at the Hoover Institution, and so he wrote this article in the Telegraph. And let me show you this what he says here. That it's. So here the where are we? Yeah, for a better tomorrow.
It doesn't look like he's trying to pull the wool over our eyes here.
That's right. Yes. For a better tomorrow, Palestinians need to forget historical grievances. So that's very good. I mean, it's like here he is again. He's living in Belgravia, very wealthy man. Very successful. Published everywhere, gets to spend some time every year on the leafy campus of Stanford as a fellow of the Hoover Institution. And he's telling Palestinians, of whom he's not one, that they need to forget their historical grievances. Just forget it. Many people have tales of tragedy and displacement, but success comes when you are able to move on. Just move on, forget about it. And then if Israel succeeds in extirpating Hamas, it will provide the Palestinians with a unique opportunity to re-examine their national destiny, and history can be their guide. For nations must tailor their ambitions to what is politically and ultimately militarily practical, and for no people is this more pressingly true than the Palestinian Arabs. In professing to believe that it can expel the Jews from the river to the sea, Hamas has been selling a dream that has brought only tragedy and rubble.
So he's a historian,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay, well, I don't see that he's not demonstrating that he knows much history so far.
Well, this is the thing. Now, you notice how when it comes to Israel, suddenly everybody's a realist. Somebody, hey, I'm a realist. Everyone sounds like Mearsheimer, when it comes to Israel. So on every other issue, we need intervention. We need a muscular foreign policy. We need to, bomb this one, bomb that one. We need to impose sanctions. We need to intervene. But suddenly, hey, hands off. We're gonna let things develop of their own momentum.
Well, I mean, again, this is this childish, juvenile reductionism. So you get rid of Hamas and everything's fine. Everything's hunky-dory. Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. It's the familiar argument you always hear in the West. It's Putin. If you just get rid of Putin, okay. Yep. Yep. No, but Putin represents the hopes and aspirations of the Russian people. He does it every few years at the ballot box. Okay, so did Hamas. Hamas was elected, but Hamas wasn't around in 1948. So
right, that's right. And the point is that we've heard this argument: if only we can get rid of this or that leader, everything was good. I mean, they were saying this for years about Arafat. They were trying to assassinate. How many years did they try to assassinate Arafat?
I think they did assassinate. That's my opinion.
Me too.
Okay, we just have to get rid of Gaddafi. Everything will be fine.
That's right. And of course, before that, we have to get rid of Nasser. Now, I don't know whether Nasser was assassinated, but you ask any Egyptian, he'll tell you, yeah, of course Nasser was assassinated. I don't know whether that's true, but every Egyptian believes that Nasser was assassinated.
In professing to believe that it can expel the Jews from the river to the sea, Hamas, that is not Hamas's position. Its position, it changed in 2017 in believing that there could be a Palestinian state within the 67 borders. Mr. Historian.
That's right. And I think what's important here is the issue of de facto and de jure, because Hamas and I think and Fatah accept Israel de facto. That's a different issue from accepting it de jure. So when they say Israel's right to exist, well, they're not going to accept that because they're not going to accept that this is a legal and legitimate state. But they do accept Israel as a fact of life, that you have to accommodate yourself.
Acceptance is not equivalent to legitimacy, everyone.
Right. Exactly.
Remember that.
Yeah,
okay?
Exactly.
It's like dealing with the Taliban, okay? Yeah. You don't have to give them legitimacy, but you can accept the fact that they're running the show.
Exactly, exactly. But the way they frame this, what Israel's right to exist means they're trying to force you to accept the legality and legitimacy of the state. Well, that's a thought crime. They're trying to get you to think something that you don't think. I mean, they're just forcing you to accept something that they don't. They're not going to accept that. They're not going to accept that this was a proper legal way to create a state.
Particularly since the Palestinians were promised by the United Nations that they would have a state.
Right.
Okay.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So the idea that Palestinians not only want a state, they have a legitimate right to a state because it has been recognized by the international community under international law. Right. So they're not asking for anything more. That's
a very good point, because he's saying that somehow, well, this is all quite ridiculous what they're demanding, but in fact, as you said, it's not ridiculous. This has been promised to them by the United Nations, repeated UN resolutions. This was promised to them, so they're not. It's not like, hey, you're pie in the sky. We demand, a state for ourselves. Like the Kurds would say, that's pie in the sky. No one ever promised the Kurds that they would have a state of their own. Maybe that some British officials promised them, but it's never been put down on a serious document. But here, you're right, it was promised to them, and it's there enshrined in innumerable UN Security Council resolutions. So it says, once Hamas has been destroyed, the people of Gaza will only be able to flourish if they learn from all the other peoples who suffered large-scale population transfers in the later 1940s and forswear revanchism. Again, it's not revanchism. I mean, they're asking for something that's theirs. Revanchism, you know, you're asking for something that belongs to someone else. So then he says, rather than endlessly trying to relitigate Nakba, they must recognize it as an irreversible historical fact that is now 3/4 of a century old. They must accept that back in the immediate post-Second World War period, many national groupings had to move en masse from the lands they had previously occupied, and happiness has only come to those who have been able to deal with it. So again, this is a kind of a variant on Netanyahu's argument.
Yeah, but where are they supposed to go? Okay. The Sudeten Germans, they had a place to go. It was called Germany.
That's right. But again, it's the same with that argument, that the Netanyahu argument. You're going back to something that was just awful. I mean, these are terrible things that happened after World War II. I mean, you just picked up these Sudeten Germans who hadn't done anything wrong, incidentally. I mean, they were just living there peacefully on this land that they'd lived there for centuries. They were just picked up lock, stock, and barrel and dumped in Germany. No compensation, of course, paid to them at all. So, I mean, that's a terrible thing that was done to the Germans. You're using that as an example.
But my point is tragic as it was for the Germans outside of what would become post-war Germany. They did have a place
to go. No, I know.
Okay?
That's
exactly important. Right. Okay, George, and kind of inside baseball, George and I talked about a lot of these things over the years. Okay, but my point is, and to this professor here, is that we do use as a benchmark the Nuremberg process. Okay, now it's not perfect, but genocide is not something that should be tolerated. Okay, and it's universally accepted. Displacing people, right. Annexating land through force, all these things are relatively new ideas. Okay, but here we're supposed to suspend everything.
Well, that's it,
for one country, one group of people.
Right. All this happened in the aftermath of World War II, which was a horrific war. And basically, we have to say the Allied powers did a lot of terrible, very cruel things, and they didn't give a thought about it. They just didn't care. They said the Germans had it coming to them. We don't care. But you can't use that as somehow an exemplar to apply to other circumstances. I mean, it was terrible, these things that were done in the aftermath of World War II.
The Netanyahu line is, and the ambassador, in the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, if we distill down to the simplest words, what they're saying is that you were bad, so we can be
exactly
bad.
Exactly. You were bad. That's right. Yes. That's exactly right. And that's indeed, in the late 1940s, some ethnic groups had to move far longer distances than the Palestinians. Well, oh, great. Well, there was longer distances and in much the same or more traumatic circumstances. Well, okay, so what are you complaining about? Look what happened to them. The transfer of power in India saw 16 million Sikhs, Muslims, and Hindus move from their homes in the Punjab and the northwest frontier, never to return. Well, those were great times. I mean, I don't know how many millions were killed in those wars, but it's many millions. The Crimean Tatars, who lost 46% of their number, the Soviet Chechens, the Ingush and the Balkars, the Volga Germans, and the Meshkita Turks were all relocated in their millions by Stalin and forced to build new lives for themselves elsewhere in the USSR under unimaginably harsh conditions. Yes, but they were allowed to return. That Stalin did that, but under Khrushchev they were allowed to return. So he seems typically enough he doesn't bother to
what an interesting omission, George.
Yeah. Historians estimate that up to 1.5 million of them died, yet most made the best of their new lives rather than plotting to return with raping and baby killing.
Okay.
Raping and baby. Yeah, that's right. So make new life for yourself. Go ahead, make a new life for yourself. So the Japanese and the Korean, Kuril, and Sakhalin Islanders were forcibly moved from their homes in the post-war period, to even the Italians of Istria. More recently have been the Greeks of Turkey in 1956, the Greeks of Cyprus in 1974, and the Vietnamese boat people in 1975.
Is he mentioning the boat people?
Yeah, I don't get that one. Yeah.
No, because my brother married a Chinese woman from Vietnam. She was a boat person, and she to this day believes that she won the lottery because she made it to America. So I don't know. Right. She wasn't forced out; it was her choice.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. No, that's right. That's the point about the Vietnamese boat people. They weren't forced out. I mean, they left. Although these people were displaced more recently than the Nakba, they have dealt with the upheaval and moved on emotionally and psychologically in a way the Palestinians have simply not. You really got to get with the program.
Well, maybe they should just be sent to Madagascar.
Well, that's right. Yeah, that's right. It's like, they're saying, I don't know, somebody else, has been, and ends up in a wheelchair, and then said, well, what are you complaining about? He's made a perfectly good life for himself in a wheelchair. So now you're in a wheelchair. Big deal. I mean, so that's great. Okay, that's their
yeah, but see, what this historian misses, and it's so obvious, is that these were the Palestinian, their fate has been tied to a UN process since 1948. All the other examples he's giving are not, okay? They're not. And I'm not trying to dismiss the tragedy of these people here, but to create Israel, they had to take on the fate of the Palestinian people. In none of these other cases does it apply.
Well, that's right, and also, you can't go back in the past and say that, well, this was done, and so therefore, that's a perfectly accepted historical fact, because, well, a lot of things were done in the past that we don't regard as being acceptable anymore. You can go back, what was acceptable form of warfare in the past. Well, we don't accept that as any longer as acceptable form of warfare. We don't accept it as we don't accept the idea of just simply picking people up and then dumping them somewhere.
Well, I mean, historically, up until very recently, in the scheme of things, if you lost a war, you became a slave.
You became a slave, exactly.
You became a slave. Yeah. You were brought into a concubine. That's how shit creek. You're
right.
Up shit creek without a paddle, but that's the way it always was. If you lost, you became a slave.
Exactly, and then of course you can turn this around and say, well, why doesn't that apply to the Israelis? I mean, why don't they just, get lost, go somewhere else, find a place for yourself, Birobidzhan, that's still available, I imagine, or maybe, have a chunk of Bavaria. Why not carve out a piece of territory out of Bavaria? Beautiful country, much nicer than Palestine, and make a state for yourself in Bavaria, or have a chunk of France. If you're gonna argue, well, stop complaining, then what about Israel? Well, let them stop complaining all the time about how mean everybody is to you and how all your neighbors don't like you. Fine, go find yourself another neighborhood.
Canada is one of the most empty countries in the world. Knock yourself out.
And then here we have, starting in the late 1940s, some 800,000 Jews from Arabia whose families had lived there for centuries were expelled. I don't understand his use of the word Arabia. I don't think he means Saudi Arabia. I think he just means the Arab countries.
Or the peninsula.
Well, but it wasn't just from the peninsula. I mean, the Arabs were expelled from a number of Arab countries. I mean, like Iraq, they were expelled from Iraq, and they were expelled from.
Yeah, I think he had, this is the kind of a tinge of British colonialism.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Arabia.
Arabia. That's how the whole of this territory was Arabia. And then after the German defeat in 1945, more than 3 million ethnic Germans were forced to move 300 miles westwards out of Silesia, the Sudetenland, and other historically German areas east of the Oder and Nisser rivers. As with other refugees, they took only with what could be carried and rolled on carts. Yet where are their violent demands for the return of their ancestral lands presently lived in by Poles and Czech? I don't think anyone was going to be listening too much to German complaints. I mean, they have, you know, legitimate complaints, but no one's going to be in the mood to listen to them.
Okay, and plus, I mean, I don't know if this guy knows, but all the way deep into the 1970s, there were groups within Germany. There was a pressure group, a lobby group, you know, it was like, you know, can we get some of this, at least maybe get some compensation?
Right.
Okay. And then, you know, they kind of run up against, you know, well, I mean, the SS is out of business, so I don't really know.
No, but that's very funny that you mentioned that, because I remember sometime in the mid-80s, in the Helmut Kohl government, there was a guy who was German interior minister. I think his name was Zimmermann. And he said, well, I think that the Germany's borders should be the 1937 borders. Those should be the Germany's borders. And he had perfectly reasonable. Like, no, we're not taking anything that Hitler took, but basically the 1937 borders. And of course, there was absolute uproar, particularly from everyone abroad, because this guy was an interior minister, and of course he had to resign. But you know, that's I think 1983, 84 that he said this. You know, the 1937 borders. So.
Well, I mean, my only retort to that is something that George and I mention all of the time, particularly when we're talking about Ukraine. In the last 100 years, what Ukraine is, well, it depends on your year. Okay,
right, exactly. That's
right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
And also, Germany is a relatively new state. Yes. Okay, it's not one of Europe's ancient states. No, okay, it's not like Gaul or the Iberian Peninsula or what we call today the UK. Okay, right. You know, it just everything is in flux. Okay, ask the Palestinians.
Right. So it says none of these people are today actively demanding the right to murder the people who have now lived in their former lands for over 7 decades. But that's not really quite what they're asking. They're asking, I think, as you said earlier, they're asking for the implementation of UN Security Council resolutions. And according to the UN Security Council, the state of Palestine comprises 2 entities, the West Bank and Gaza. Gaza is supposed to be the entity known as Palestine, whose capital would be East Jerusalem. So that's Gaza isn't just something that's separate. You know, Gaza and the West Bank are regarded as the constituent elements of the state of Palestine. So you know, they're not asking for the right to murder people. They're asking for the recognition of what has been determined by the UN Security Council.
As one of the UNRWA people told me that was on my program, Guinness, I think his last name was. I've seen him recently on different broadcasts. Because he corrected me on my own program. He said, it's not the Palestinian territory, it's the Palestinian territories. Right. And don't you forget it. Okay.
Right. That's right. They have instead built new lives for themselves, looking forward rather than back. Taiwan, which gave up raiding the Chinese mainland in 1979, today has a far higher standard of living per capita than its old enemy. Many of the Vietnamese who emigrated to the United States are today living the American dream. The sole exception to this sensible and mature policy of moving on from national catastrophe have been the Palestinian extremists, whose irredentism and recurring intifadas and whose latest sadistic eruption in southern Israel have turned much of Gaza City into rubble. They turned Gaza City into rubble. But again, you know, just this idea of, well, it's just be realistic, you know, be realistic. Well, when else are you urging realism? Because you're somebody who supports every war going. There, apparently, you're not a realist. But on this issue, you're a realist. But of course, you can turn it around again to say, well, okay, I mean, what if other states get fed up with Israel? You know, what if, you know, the United States and Russia jointly say, you know, we've just about had it with Israel. And I think it's time for Israel to go. You know, it needs to back up and go. Well, then that same realist argument to say, well, what are you arguing about? You've got the United States and Russia and China. They all basically come to an agreement. You need to go and be quick about it. So this whole idea of realism is basically not really, just think, well, at the moment we're in the top dog seat, so you have to be realistic and accept that we are the top dogs.
Okay, we can let's go back to the Sudeten Germans. Yeah, they were for, they said, you lost your people lost the war, get lost, okay, but you have a place to go. All right. In Taiwan, the Kuomintang, you lost to Mao, okay, right. You're on the losing end. Go to Taiwan, go, you have a place to go, okay, but Gaza is a prison. The guards are not letting them out, even if they want to leave. Okay, I don't know what he's talking about here.
Right. Well, he gets into that. I mean,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This is where he gets into it. This is, here he is. Sorry. Just as Hamas is using roadblocks to prevent Palestinians from moving south and away from Israeli attack on northern Gaza, so it is also preventing the Palestinians from moving on from the utterly doomed hope of retaking the land of Israel. So again, it's, he's saying, oh, well, they apparently it's the Hamas who's preventing their departure. Well, yeah, because it's their land. I mean, and indeed, they are refugees. They are descendants, or most of them, I think 70%, I think, are descendants of the refugees of 1948. So for them to leave, that means they become refugees second time over. I mean, they're already refugees. Now they have to move away again.
But George, I mean, what is he talking about here? So it is also preventing the Palestinians from moving on from the utterly doomed hope of retaking the land of Israel. They're not, that's not their agenda. I don't know what he's talking about here.
That's right. Exactly.
It's not their agenda at all. They're saying, break the blockade. Stop it. Stop. Right. If you're 17 years old, you've never been outside of the Gaza Strip. All you've been able to do is see the wall, the perimeter. Okay. Maybe that one of those 17-year-olds were involved in the Hamas raid, the first time they were out of prison in their lifetime. Right. I don't know what he is talking about here. Right. That what they want is, I guess we're going to sound like a broken record here. They want recognition of the United Nations Security Council resolutions on the development of a sustainable Palestinian state, not retaking the land of Israel.
Right, that's right. The Palestinians have thus become the willing dupes. So they're being willing dupes of the cynical policy of foreign countries to use them to pressurize and destabilize the world's sole Jewish state. Again, it assumes that we need to have a Jewish state, which is, a strange enough notion, since there hadn't been for two millennia, and there wasn't exactly a huge demand for it until a few people came up with this notion, including the Rothschilds. We need a Jewish state, but as if this is the natural order of things. But then again, also the cynical policy. So it's their fault. It's the cynical policy. It's their fault of the other Arab states that this is their condition.
Well, it's Iran's fault that there's so many American bases surrounding his country. It's Iran's fault.
That's right, exactly. If only it wasn't such a nasty place. If only they'd stuck with the Shah. He was such a good leader. Were each Arab state to take in 100,000 Palestinians, each one, 100,000 Palestinians, fewer than the number of Ukrainians than Britons welcomed in, then Gazans would be state. So imagine that every Arab state, okay, well, we'll take 100,000. Why? I mean, why should they do this? I mean, you go to Morocco and say, well, you're going to take in 100,000. Why would I do that? I mean, you go to Qatar, you need to take in 100,000.
Oh, Qatar will not do. Oh, no.
And it's like
Bahrain? No.
But that would also mean a safer Israel, which is not what some Arab states want. How do you know that that's a safer Israel? Because what about the people in the West Bank? They're not going to be very happy.
Well, I mean, okay, again, George and I are realists, okay? So why is it an imperative to have a safe Israel? Maybe we could have a safe Palestine?
Right, exactly. That is exactly. I mean, that's the point that, this is realism consists of doing whatever Israel needs. Why doesn't realism consist of doing everything that the Palestinians, after all, they've got the numbers. I mean, their demography their fertility rate much higher than that of the Israelis. I mean, like there's a lot more of them and a lot more Arab states, and not to mention Iran and everyone. There's a lot more of them. 20 years from now, Israel will be that much smaller demographically relative to everybody else. So why is it realist to do everything that Israel wants rather than the overwhelming majority of people around it?
Well, wouldn't it be safer for Israel if there was an internationally recognized given security guarantees to a state called Palestine?
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Then Benjamin Netanyahu's best reply to those demanding a ceasefire before Israel can destroy Hamas ought to be that of his hero, Winston Churchill, who on the 14th of July, 1941 said, "We ask no favors of the enemy. We seek from them no compunction. On the contrary, if tonight the people of London were asked to cast their vote whether a convention should be entered into to stop the bombing of all cities, the overwhelming majority would cry, no, we will mete out to the Germans the measure, and more than the measure that they have meted out to us. We will have no truce or parley with you, or the grisly gang who work your wicked will. You do your worst, and we will do our best." Now, this argues against what Roberts is saying, because if you look at July 1941, Churchill had no plan for victory. He had no hope of victory. So why wouldn't Churchill do what other British politicians urged him to do, which is accept Hitler's peace offer? Hitler said, I don't want to touch any of your imperial interests, your colonies, you keep all that. Let us have our way in Europe. You do your thing. That would have been the sensible thing. That's the realist position. And instead, you went on 14th of July. The Red Army was being, wiped out by the Wehrmacht at that time. So the idea, well, this is it. You're going to, so this goes against this realism that you have to accept the will of the stronger.
It's probably this historian, because he just has cultural cachet and all of that. I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot of intelligence to see that he just ratioed himself.
Yeah.
I mean, he's pulling a Burrell. He's arguing against himself.
Right.
Yeah. If that was the case, you should have said, "Yep, the game's up." Okay.
That's it. There's a peace offer here, very reasonable. And we know Hitler did not want a war with Great Britain. I mean, made that clear many times. He spared the British at the time of Dunkirk. He could have destroyed their forces. He held back because he wanted to, curry favor with the British. So why not? So why should the Palestinians? They have to abjectly surrender. But here suddenly, Churchill with his defiant words. And so now here, this is I want to just show how inconsistent he is. This is Roberts, 27th of July, 2022. Boris's career has ended on a glorious high. Boris, our good friend Boris. Zelensky is a worthy winner of the Churchill Award, and his praise for the Prime Minister won't be forgotten. So he says here, in Downing Street on Monday, Boris Johnson gave a 5-minute, 563-word speech that reminds us how, before too long, we will start to miss his oratory and leadership. Are you missing his oratory and leadership?
This is a tongue bath here. Let's keep going.
Presenting the Churchillian Leadership Award of the International Churchill Society to Vladimir Zelensky, the Prime Minister explained eloquently why the West needs to continue to stand beside Ukraine in its struggle against tyranny. He likened Zelensky's decision to stay in his capital after the Russian attack to Churchill opting to stay in London during the Blitz.
But Kiev wasn't blitzed.
But Kiev wasn't blitzed. But again, notice he's again completely changed his argument. Why isn't it the rational thing for Ukraine to accept geography, politics, demography, and realize you cannot win this war against Russia? It cannot happen. You cannot do it. But apparently, no, we gotta, throw in everything with Zelensky. And then it says, the Churchillian Leadership Award has been given to many distinguished people over the years, including Margaret Thatcher, Prince Charles, and Madeleine Albright.
Good company.
Now, Madeleine Albright, again, she's so Churchillian. I guess, you know, with her 500,000 children are worth dying. And of course, then bombing.
Well, she physically resembled Churchill.
She did physically resemble.
Kind of short and, stout, to be polite.
But you know, I guess pulverizing a country of 9 million like Serbia, I think that's Churchillian. Yeah, we did it. We went up against the tyrants. We smashed Serbia. You know, they were bullying us. They were threatening us, but we stood up to the Serbs. And why does Prince Charles get an award? But it's impossible to think of any world leader who so personifies Churchill's brand of defiance of tyranny and belief in democracy than Zelensky. Were Churchill alive today, he would immediately recognize what Boris, again, a good friend Boris, called the sheer moral and physical courage of Zelensky. So, I mean, you know, read this quote, I'm quoting it, you know, he's a famous popular historian in the UK. I mean, you know, so he's written biographies of Churchill, and I think he's written several biographies of Churchill. As for Ukraine, we can, with a fair amount of certainty, believe that Churchill would have echoed the sentiments he expressed about Finland in January 1940, when he said of the country's superb, nay, sublime, in the jaws of peril, Finland shows what free men can do. The service rendered by Finland to mankind is magnificent. Now, in 1940, Finland's attack is waging a war against the Soviet Union. Then it loses the war. It signs a peace treaty. Then it immediately breaks the peace treaty, invades the Soviet Union, and then actually is declared to be an ally of Nazi Germany. So Great Britain declares war on Finland, and Finland has to then sign a peace treaty, essentially surrendering to Great Britain. You kind of think, well, might have been an idea to put a little bit of context before you tell us the glories of the Finns.
I think you should have just dropped it. Okay. No, it's one of these things, you know, we see this all the time. He has this kind of flaccid thesis, and he just kind of, you know, gives us layer after layer to try to make it have sense. But
right.
By throwing that in there is just that, and I would have said, you know, if I was grading the paper, I would have said that doesn't work. Just drop it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So here then is another article. This is Roberts wrote 14th of March, 2022, just about the time that his hero Boris was sabotaging any possible peace agreement that could have ended the war in Ukraine. Even crushing Ukraine won't satisfy Putin's warped territorial ambitions. NATO can.
How is it? What are warped territorial ambitions?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Are they different from ordinary territorial ambitions?
Yes. Okay. Or extraordinary.
Yes, exactly.
Or maybe as opposed to mundane.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, regular. Yeah, that's right. NATO cannot afford to show any weakness. The Russian dictator has laid claim to the Baltic states as well.
I didn't know.
I did not know that. Yes.
I didn't know.
And then says, it is rare for dictators to set out their thoughts plainly, but when they do, it makes sense to listen to what they say. Last July, Vladimir Putin wrote his famous 6,885-word essay on the historical unity of Russians and Ukrainians, which explained why he believed that Ukraine did not deserve a destiny.
And gagglers can go back and look in the archive, and George and I did a video on it. Go
exactly.
ahead.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we've referred to this essay many times. Should Putin win in Ukraine, he has made it clear where he would like to go next.
I didn't know. I'm waiting with bated breath.
We need to listen to his threats. Although ethnic Russians make up only 5% of Lithuania's population, they make up 24% of Estonians and 25% of Latvians. Although these ethnic Russians are not separatists, Putin would not be hard-pressed to find a casus bellum. Well, if that's true, it might be an idea not to persecute your substantial Russian minority. I mean, if you're worried about Putin finding a casus bellum, then maybe you should just treat them decently, treat them like first-class citizens, and not persecute them like giving them these ridiculous.
Well, I mean, it is rare for dictators to set out their thoughts plainly, but when they do, it makes sense to listen to what they have to say. Well, as a point of reference, I would, I guess I'm going to have to pick up my own challenge here. I'm going to have to go through the Kremlin website, the presidential administration website, and I'll probably have to spend hours and hours and hours and find that there are no territorial ambitions for the Baltic.
No, exactly. I do not remember when he ever said that he had any intention of incorporating any of these Baltic states. But that's a casus bellum.
But and I have asked over the years, particularly since 2014, just to kind of be the oddball foreigner asking stupid questions. And do you think the Baltic states should be part of Russia? No, they're not interested. They say they don't like us. We don't really particularly have much love for them, so it's better to be separate. That's why they have their own country. There's no interest in that whatsoever. And on top of it, while it's in my mind, is that if all of these countries are so afraid of Russia, why do they only spend less than 2% of their GDP on defense? Okay.
Yeah, these guys, they don't even spend 2%. I mean,
these guys are the worst. They're loafers. Okay,
totally loafers. And anytime Russia does not talk about bringing in anybody else. I mean, when they talk about this Russian civilization, I mean, it usually talks about Russians, Ukrainians, and Belarusians. It wasn't, they're not saying, hey, well, let's bring in Kazakhstan in there, let's or Kyrgyzstan, whatever.
And from 2014 on, let's bring in the Russians of the Donbass. Yeah, because they were being shelled every single day.
Right, exactly. And Russia has, after all this time, they still haven't incorporated South Ossetia and Abkhazia, even though they recognize their independence. They haven't incorporated them. Transnistria, none of them, they've not done any of those things. So you would have thought if Putin has all these great ambitions, he could have done something about them. He hasn't.
I've been told by my Kyrgyz friends that there is a plurality of people that want their country to become part of Russia, but Russia doesn't want that. Okay,
that's right, exactly. Then he goes on, which is where NATO must stand absolutely firm and be totally unequivocal. Article 5 of the NATO treaty only works if potential aggressors appreciate in perfectly clear terms that one Russian boot crossing 1 inch of Baltic territory will be considered an attack on all of NATO and will be met with a declaration of war.
No, I wouldn't be so certain. I wouldn't be so certain.
I mean, I don't know how many times we've brought this, we've discussed the gaggle. That's not what's in the NATO treaty. I mean, but again, what's interesting is this is somebody who was very well connected among British ruling circles. Now, if that's what the British ruling circles are thinking, then the British people are in a bad way, because I don't think the British people fully realize that this is what they're planning on, and that one boot crossing 1 inch of NATO territory and they're on the hook. They're going to have declare war on Russia. Do the British people, are they aware that this is the plan? Well, at least this is what's in the minds of the British rulers. Well,
also, George and I been around as long as NATO has been in existence, and again, to kind of refresh people or inform them, is that when NATO came up with Article 5, there was really never any serious expectation that would ever have to be invoked. Right. Vis-a-vis the Soviet Union, because people that knew the Soviet Union understood that it was a status quo a state. What they wanted, and it's really kind of simple, after 27 to 30 million casualties during the Second World War, taking the entire brunt of the Nazi coalition, the Soviets wanted to keep what they won in the war. Okay, I mean, what they wanted to do is maintain that, and so going after the French Riviera, as nice as it is, they never had in that expectation. And people that knew the Soviet Union knew that they would never have to face a Soviet invasion. Okay, and essentially, after the Berlin Wall was put up, Berlin was a piece in the Cold War was taken off the chessboard because the status quo was recognized on all sides. Okay, And so there would be no war in Europe. Okay. Now, for political propaganda, ideological reasons, both sides played this little game. Okay. And of course, it was always the back door for the United States to be able to determine security policy in Europe. So, I mean, you know, that one's, I'm sorry to waste so much time on such superfluous words, but I mean, this is just fear mongering, George.
That's right. No, that's exactly right. You're right. I mean, you know, the Soviet Union was status quo power. You know, what they kept at the end of World War II is what they got by the force of arms fighting an invasion. They didn't invade anybody. It was they were invaded. This is what they got out of the war. But in comparison with what the United States and Great Britain got out, it was pretty small. I mean, the United States got all the industrial power, you know, of Germany, and then subsequently France and Italy, which became major industrial powers, and got Great Britain. So, you know, what did the Russians got? What, Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, or Czechoslovakia was a little bit more advanced, but you know, nothing in comparison with Western Germany.
And what the United States got out, which is, you know, probably in the larger scheme of things, it got Bretton Woods, dollar supremacy.
Exactly,
okay?
exactly. That's right. So Antony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, has been good on the subject. He's good. He's really good on the subject. And listening to him, there is no reason to believe that the United States would not invoke Article 5 and thus be prepared to sacrifice Chicago for Vilnius, Riga, or Tallinn. So he actually presents this that, you know, good, thank God, you know, we're not getting any cold feet from the Americans. Yeah, good, you're ready to sacrifice Chicago for Vilnius. Do Americans know this? I mean, are Americans aware that that Antony Blinken intends to sacrifice Chicago for Vilnius, Riga, and Tallinn? Would be news. We should tell the American people that that's the plan.
Yeah, but this is just hyperbole and bluster. Okay, first of all, I don't think he knows. I suppose you can figure out what Blinken thinks because he's not that bright. Okay, but this is just bravado. That's all this is.
I agree. Yet even to put it in those terms must invite doubt. And so it cannot be reiterated too regularly or too strongly. So we're just going to keep it in the background. We won't say it, but in reality, that's what we're committed to: sacrificing, you know, Chicago and New York for Vilnius, Riga, and Tallinn. What are comes to ridiculous? I mean, when you think of it, I mean, apart from anything else, it's an absolutely reckless, insane policy of sacrificing Chicago, New York, or whatever for Vilnius, Riga, or Tallinn. It's insane. It's at the height of idiocy, a height of recklessness to do anything like that. I mean, you know, we already had 2 world wars. You now want another one, a third world war. It's going to be even more destructive because the weapons are more destructive. I mean, this is a guy who's a prominent historian. He's a member of the House of Lords. This is the kind of thing he writes. And again, where's the realism here? We looked at that in detail at that earlier article, and it was all about how the Palestinians have to be a realistic, you know, you've got a nice, prosperous life that you could be living, you know, in somewhere or other, in Tunis or whatever. Now suddenly you're ready to destroy Chicago and New York for Vilnius.
But, you know, okay, Vilnius, Riga, and Tallinn are one thing, but maybe just ask some people in Missouri saying, the Russians just bombed Liverpool. Should we go to war with them? I don't know. Maybe.
Well,
I mean, I always find it interesting. They always take the Baltic republics. Okay,
right?
So, but and of course, Americans may think that's maybe some kind of computer game. Riga and Vilnius or something. I don't know, but But even ask a country that may, the Beatles came from there, right? Should we go to war with them? Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
That's right. The Beatles came. But you're right, because when you think of 1940, so September 1940, Britain, the Battle of Britain, which, I mean, most people thought Britain would probably lose. That doesn't mean the Germans would invade, but Britain would probably lose because the Germans just seemed invincible at that moment. There wasn't much movement in the United States. We need to get in. A great ally, a closest friend and ally is under attack.
Just the opposite.
Exactly.
Go and look at the papers at the time. He's like, that's not for us. I mean, the interesting thing is Charles Lindbergh, the spirit of St. Louis. I mean, he was, very, very very high profile, being anti-war. And so Roosevelt had to be, that was Roosevelt at his most devious level of appropriations and, slowly molding public opinion. Yep. He spent an enormous amount of time on it, and he was amazingly devious about it.
And provoking the Germans, because the Germans could see that they were continually sending arms to Great Britain, but he was kind of provoking them so that they would, so there'd be another Lusitania.
But everybody, they attacked a civilian cruise liner, there's only, no, they all had arms in them. Okay,
right. They all had arms in them, and when I also say, Hitler told them, don't do it. Do not provoke the Americans. They're looking to provoke you. Do not do it. Do not attack these ships that are sending weapons to Great Britain. Okay, so suddenly this realist, apparently, this Mearsheimer, you gotta accept the way a reality. Whoa, but reality also includes being ready to go to war, a nuclear war with Russia over Tallinn and Vilnius. I mean, what happened to the realism?
Well, why are the British still in Gibraltar?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, again, it's something that we talked about earlier today is, the people like this historian, Tony Blaine, they still believe that they have a right to have forced regime change when, where and when they want. Who should be where. And so, it's not up to me what the fate of the Palestinian people are, but as George and I have said over and over again, and I will repeat it very briefly again, all of the examples this gentleman has presented, they're not grounded in United Nations Security Council resolutions. Palestine is a special case because it was made into one. It had to be made into a special case to create the state of Israel. You cannot divide the two. As much as the mainstream wants to, they have nothing to do with each other. Nothing. They're hooked at the hip.
You're absolutely right. I mean, historically, it's absolutely right. Britain was the mandatory power, and he gave up. It said basically that's it. We're throwing in, this Palestine into your problem. Basically, it's the United Nations problem. You have to deal with it, and that's when the United Nations came up with a partition plan. That didn't go anywhere. But nonetheless, for Israel to be accepted into the United Nations, and it was 1949. Israel had to make a number of commitments because otherwise it would not have been allowed in to the United Nations. And I mean, United probably shouldn't have even done it, given that this wasn't the partition plan. Israel had a lot more territory than it was supposed to under the 1947 plan. But you're absolutely right. It's within the United Nations remit to deal with the issue of Palestine. And so, which wasn't the case anywhere else. But again, you then have to go back to the question that, well, he's telling the Palestinians what they should do. But you're nobody to tell them what to do. I mean, it's up to them to decide. You could say, well, they're being irrational. You could, it's an argument. You could say, okay, they should do the rational thing. Go make money somewhere. Go and live somewhere. I don't know where, but go and live somewhere else. And that is an argument. But you aren't anybody to make that argument. You're not a Palestinian. You don't live there. They have to make that decision. And who knows whether they've made the right decision? I mean, history will decide at some point whether they whether and when they made the right decision. Presumably, what they're doing now is bring what they consider a right decision is bringing Palestine into the world's attention, and it certainly has done that. These massive demonstrations in cities throughout the world, suddenly people are talking about an issue that gradually they'd forgotten about.
Well, and George, it's a bit in bad taste, isn't it, for the former colonial power telling you what you should do. I can remember, when Hong Kong returned to Chinese sovereignty. In the last what was his title? Not ambassador, vice.
Was it governor? Was it governor?
Yeah, governor general. Yeah, telling them what the Beijing need this and get lost. Your lease is over, dude. Okay, And you were a colonial power. You had no democracy there. You were the head honcho. You ran the place like a 19th century colony. Okay.
Right.
So what are you talking about? The democratic future of people. It's so disgusting. Okay.
I remember you had a crosstalk when at the time of the sort of the recent protests in Hong Kong, and you had there was some British guys saying, well, we have a certain responsibility for Hong Kong, and the Chinese guy, I don't understand. You gave it up in 1997. What responsibility? You don't have any responsibility. When you gave it up in 1997, you lost all responsibility for Hong Kong. I mean, you probably remember who the Chinese guy, but I don't. But they don't. Well, we have some responsibility. You know, we 20 years on, you still have some sort of responsibility for Hong Kong.
What makes articles like this even more insidious, George, is that it was the Western powers, and the Soviet Union went along with it, but it was Western powers in the wake of the Second World War created the United Nations. Gave a standing to international humanitarian law. We've talked about the Nuremberg process and things like that. And it really is incumbent upon the architects, at least the descendants of the architects of this world order, to defend it every once in a while.
Right. Yeah, no,
it's just really distasteful for me.
That's right. But you know, they only ever invoke the United Nations when it serves their purpose. So they thought, okay, well, when it came to Russia and Ukraine, hey, we're going to make we can bring up the United Nations. But you bring up any other issue. I mean, when you bring up the invasion of Iraq, hey, well, how did you do that? You had three permanent Security Council members who opposed it. That's a record. I need to have you embark on something and 3 out of 5 are opposed to it. You went around the UN Security Council to bomb Yugoslavia. You knew that it would be vetoed, so you went around it. So you don't pay any attention to international law, other than when you suddenly think that you can use it to your advantage, just like International Criminal Court. Oh, that's it. You know, arrest Putin immediately. Said, well, what about investigate what's going on in Gaza? Well, I gotta, let's do lunch sometime.
Yeah. I think they've gone as far as, okay, I hope you're sitting down for this, everyone. It's possible a war crime has been committed.
Possible. Yes.
That's right. Let's have drinks now. Let's go out. Okay. I know a great little bistro around the corner.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And then we can say, well, it's possible. We're addressing the issue. We're definitely addressing the issue again. So don't say that we don't.
They do come to conclusions all the time without doing any investigation. It's really quite remarkable, George. Putin is stealing babies. But Joe Biden can say with authority that babies were beheaded by Hamas. Okay,
that's right.
He said it on national.
Yeah, exactly. He walked it. Well, the White House walked it back. He didn't walk it. The White House walked it back subsequently. But again, whenever that happens, no one really knows the walk back. They just know that he said, yeah, I saw the pictures. Just like this guy Donny Deutsch. Oh, babies were ripped from the womb. Oh yeah, really pile on the horror. That's a new one. I hadn't heard that one. I mean, so you can just make it up as you go along.
These people have the Belgian babies on bayonets scenario always out in front of them. They just have to change the names, places.
That's right. Yeah, but they added a new twist. They're ripping them out of the womb. That has a kind of Shakespearean sort of quality to it. Whoa, that's.
Yeah, have you noticed how Tony Blinken is trying to be very Shakespearean in the way he speaks? He like bites his lip and kind of looks down, ponders. When he's a pathological liar, we all know exactly what he's doing. Okay,
right, exactly.
I think we need a pause.
A pause, and then the latest is
what does that mean? What does that mean?
That's right. It doesn't mean anything. Just you make so that it seems like, well, we're not opposing a ceasefire, which is a temporary ceasefire. And then Netanyahu says, yeah, you can stuff that. You don't get anything temporary or not so temporary, nothing. So.
And then Blinken says like, the lights are on. Can you see his eyes?
Yes.
The lights are out in him.
Yeah.
This guy is like an avatar. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
What do you figure? It's like $1,000 haircut. What do you figure? These people.
Probably is. There probably is like the sort of the Bill Clinton haircuts.
I remember the airport one. Yeah, it was $1,500, I think.
Yeah. That's right.
And he never had a great haircut.
No, that's right. But whoever was cutting his hair had a nice lifestyle. I mean, that's a good gig. Just do a little bit of snip, and you're a wealthy man.
Okay. All right, everybody. What we try to do here is put everything into context. We contextualize, okay? It's like these people that, they're vaunted, they're celebrated, oh, he's in the House of Lords. He must be a smart guy.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he's in the House of Lords because he ain't such a smart guy.
That's right.
Ever thought about it that way?
That's right. Yeah. He's the British phenomenon of the kind of a very facile writer, very prolific. I mean, obviously, it doesn't take him a long time to knock these articles out.
Yeah, because they're not very fact-driven.
No, they're not very good. I mean, it's a little like Christopher Hitchens, was an amazingly facile writer, very prolific. But as long as you don't think too deeply about it, it has a sort of air of learning. Bring up Cyprus and and Greece and Turkey, and boom, and then they think, well, this is solid argument for what we want, with a lot of historical references, and then that's his style. And of course, he's telling the British what they want to hear. Wow, we're fantastic people.
And just beat your chest at the very end. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
All right, everybody. That's our update for Sunday. This is the Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on local, so please visit our site, our page. And since this is Sunday, George is warming up after his very, very successful appearance on the Jimmy Dore show. So go to YouTube, go to Jimmy Dore. George is in 2 segments there. Did an ass-kicking job. Okay, congratulations, George.
Thank you very much.
And you can watch that. Put it in a loop until Tuesday.
That's right. You can watch that. So then 3 p.m. Eastern time, Tuesday, please join me. Come with comments, criticisms, and suggestions. And on the way out the door, think about little Buddy, because Buddy's latest beef is, why wasn't I on Jimmy Dore? I'm running this damn show, and I don't get on Jimmy Dore.
I think he made a cameo when I was on. Okay.
I think he remembers that. Yeah, I got to be on. I got to make my pitch. So now we've got to soothe his ruffled feathers. So if you have a few bob in your pocket, whip them out, dunk them in his tip jar. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology, and above all, we can quieten Buddy down. Maybe next time, you'll be on Jimmy Dore. So remember, if you like the Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.